Welcome to another edition of E.W. Jackson for America. Great to be with you again today. Hey, folks, share this with a friend, tell a neighbor to check me out that I'm on. We're going to invest some funds in 2025 to expanding the audience of the program. But, of course, I need your help to do that. And so please do what you can to, if you got an email list, send out the link to your email list or just tell them about the program. Maybe they don't even know about it. You can give them the website. Where is it? E.W. Jackson for America right there. And just tell them what we're doing. And we're hoping to, in fact, we will expand the ability of the program. Because next year I want to start bringing guests in and start doing some additional things, being able to share some of the videos with you that really move me and that I think are newsworthy, so that the program continues to grow and to develop and to become more relevant. So it's not just me sitting here talking, although, as you all know, I can do that. But I do want to have some significant guests on and have people on who can help inform us, inspire us, encourage us, and strengthen us in the effort to save our country. Now, look, we have a lot of issues to talk about today. But I want to share one with you that, again, you're not going to hear anywhere else talked about by anybody else, because nobody else is on this issue the way we are and our organization is. So I flew out to Chicago on Sunday night to be with Nathan Wallace. Nathan's daughter, Natalia, was murdered on July 4th of 2020 in one of these gang-related deals where, they end up apparently trying to shoot one person and end up just basically shooting randomly. Well, sadly, one of the people shot was his 7-year-old daughter, Natalia, shot through the head, killed instantly. Folks, this stuff just tears your heart out that people would do such things. But at any rate, Nathan had gotten in touch with me and asked me to come out because we've been working with America's Forgotten Children right here, America's Forgotten Children. We've been working with those parents who will work with us on trying to solve this problem, trying to bring an end to it, because it's been going on now. This sort of plague of killing has been going on now ever since the Defund the Police movement began. That's when it spiked, and it hasn't receded since. Because we really, frankly, haven't gotten back to normal policing the way we should, with all the budget cuts and all the demoralization and all the accusations against police officers. It really, in many ways, cut the legs out from under police departments all over the country, particularly in urban areas, where you got police officers not wanting to arrest people, not wanting to get involved in the streets because they realize they're going to lose. If you end up in a confrontation with someone, they get hurt, they get killed, you're the bad guy, not the criminal, not the suspect, but you, the police officer. So, and of course in Chicago, which is the worst of the worst, they're only solving 10 to 12% of these murders. Well, this is one that they did solve, thank God. So he asked me to come out because on Monday, November the 18th, there were to be closing arguments and perhaps a verdict rendered and a sentencing. And so I went out there and met him at the courthouse and sat there for at least an hour, maybe an hour and a half, maybe two, waiting for the judge to finally get to this case. So she brings in the defendants. And by the way, there are 4 defendants. Only 2 have been tried. And they have not yet been. There's not been. They had bench trials. They weren't tried before a jury. They waived their right to a jury, and instead went before a judge. My understanding is this particular judge has a reputation for cutting murderers loose and putting them back on the streets. Again, one of these loony liberals who thinks that the world is unjust, and just because somebody goes out and kills an innocent person, particularly a child, that doesn't mean they should spend the rest of their life in prison. Well, they should, and worse, in my view. But, because in my view, you ought to get the death penalty for this stuff. And we need to reintroduce the death penalty as a real punishment for this kind of behavior, so that people know, we can't maybe stop you from doing it, but just know this: you take a life. You take an innocent human life And it's not self-defense, and it's not, in the heat of passion, these things that we understand, and we make some allowance for the fact that human beings can do things that they didn't necessarily intentionally or intend to do, caught up in the heat of the moment, or you get into a fight with somebody and the person dies in the process. Those are not death penalty cases in my view. You got to be punished. You got to go to prison. You got to go to prison in some cases for a lengthy period of time because you really had no business engaging in an activity that could lead to the death of another human being. But nevertheless, our system makes allowances for these kinds of circumstances, right? Of course, self-defense means you're innocent. If you kill somebody in self-defense, you're innocent of having committed any crime, because self-defense is legal, and the use of lethal force in self-defense, where you reasonably believe that your life is at stake, that your life is threatened, that you are in imminent danger of being severely harmed or killed, you have a right to use self-defense. You have a right to use lethal self-defense. So I'm not talking about those cases. I'm talking about these cases in which you just go in and just shoot up a crowd because there's somebody that you want to kill. This was a July 4th celebration, and they just went in and started shooting up people. So we heard some of the facts. Apparently, 4 of them in a car, 1 driver, 3 passengers. They drive up, jump out, and just open fire. And in the process, 7-year-old Natalia Wallace is killed on the spot, shot through the head. So at any rate, these 2 defendants are brought in, and of course the arrogance, just kind of the nonchalant. One guy walks in. I am not kidding, folks. My team and I, because I obviously don't travel alone, but we talked about this. He walks into the courtroom, looks around. Stretches out and yawns. Like he was just coming in to see a movie or something. It was bizarre. It was bizarre. But here's what I want to share with you about that situation. By the way, so go to America's Forgotten Children. We are approaching 700 children murdered since 2020. 700 innocent children. And Natalia, each of these children is an individual with individual families, with individual fathers and mothers and relatives and with lives of their own. So I don't want to minimize this by giving you this large number as if the individuals don't matter. So that's why I went, because I wanted to be a part of Nathan's experience in this. Not just talk about it from afar, but to get up close and personal, since we've dedicated a significant portion of our resources to addressing this issue. Well, folks, I'll tell you, I felt like, and I am not exaggerating, not in the way it impressed me. I felt like I had stepped into a third world, totalitarian, communist country when I got to that courtroom. Because let me tell you what this was like. And I practiced law, okay, for, I guess, I forget the number, but 15, 17, 18 years, somewhere in there. And I did a lot of courtroom practice. I walked in, and the actual court room where the proceedings are happening with the judge and the attorneys and the clerks was encased in a bulletproof glass wall. And the people who were there to witness the proceedings were behind that wall. So really the courtroom was 2 rooms, for all practical purposes, 2 rooms. Now there was a door through which you could go and a guard there to make sure that only the right people went through. And when the proceedings started, this big burly guard sat in a chair, pushed up his back up against the door. I guess that was to prevent anybody from coming in, to prevent the defendants or anybody else from running out, but pushed his back up against the double doors. But folks, our system, our Constitution requires that our proceedings are public. Now, the whole issue of cameras in the courtrooms has been a controversy, but not people in the courtroom. But for all practical purposes, you weren't really in the courtroom. You were outside the courtroom, because they did have microphones, and there were a couple of speakers in that area, but you had to be in front of a speaker to be heard. So a lot of the proceedings and the things that were being said, you couldn't even hear. And sometimes I think the judge would turn off her microphone, because it was a female judge, because she didn't want others to hear it, or maybe she didn't consider it to be part of the official proceedings. But in my view, when you step into that courtroom and you're on the bench, everything you have to say should be part of the record, and therefore everything you have to say, other than private consultation with attorneys at the bench, which I understand, because if the judge calls me to the bench, or I say, Your Honor, may I approach, and I go to the bench, I may want to raise an issue with the judge that I don't even want the jury to hear. That's why I'm raising it, and that the judge may not want the jury to hear, and it's perfectly fine. But even that is on the record, okay? I half the time you couldn't hear what anybody was saying. I'm thinking, what is the point of even being here? They brought in a couple of carjacking cases. In one courtroom, in one morning, they had 2 carjacking cases. Which just goes, I mean, that tells you all you need to know about Chicago. So here we are, sitting beside this, my security guy said it was several inches thick, bulletproof glass. And you can barely hear what's going on. You can certainly barely see what's going on. And I thought, this feels like a communist country, where you have the form that you can, oh yes, you can go and witness the proceedings, but not really. Because basically, you got the elites here doing their thing in the system. You got the party members, I'm just relating this to what a communist country must be, the party members. And then you've got the rabble, you've got everybody else. And you sort of bring them in for show. You bring them in to make it look like, see, this is open. This is accessible to the public, but it's not really. Now look, I don't know to what extent that's the case in every Chicago courtroom, because that is the first and only Chicago courtroom I've ever been in. Okay? If it is indicative, it is emblematic of Chicago as a deeply corrupt, deeply Marxist culture. The people who run it. I mean, you heard Governor Pritzker. I mean, this guy's a billionaire. I don't know how he made his money, but he's a billionaire talking about, we're going to resist the Donald Trump administration if they come in here for our people. Well, wait a minute. Your people are the American citizens, and they're not doing a very good job of taking care of them. Because the whole city of Chicago, and I have no doubt, probably much of Illinois is racked with crime. There are probably some rural pockets and whatnot that have less of it, but I mean, the place is a hellhole. It is a basket case. They're only solving these, in Chicago, these murders of children, they're only solving about 10 or 11% of these murders. So at any rate, that was the first thing. Just the atmosphere was just horrendous. And look, of course, Nathan Wallace is black, and there were people there supporting him. Good people, decent people, hardworking people, people who are living their lives honestly. Okay? Some of them a little rough around the edges, to be very honest. But then on the other side, there were people who were there and affected cheer on these murderers. Now, look, I can understand families supporting a person who has done a horrific crime. And I can understand families saying, well, I still love my loved one. But what I can't see is you being angry with the world and with the system as if your loved one has been wronged when they've gotten involved in the killing of an innocent 7-year-old child. And how, in effect, you're hostile toward the father of the child. And that's what, there was hostility toward Nathan. You're hostile toward the father of the child because the father of the child is doing what he ought to do, which is being there to witness these proceedings, to try to make sure that his daughter gets justice. And you're angry with him over that. Folks, this stuff is pathological. It really is. It's pathological. So at any rate, they went through closing arguments, and talked about what happened on that fateful day, how this child lost her life. The sentencing, one was the driver, and I think they're trying to suggest that the driver was not as culpable as the other person who was being tried. And by the way, this is 4 years out, right? Two of the defendants have not yet been brought to trial. And I guess I was told by Nathan what they want to do is what the defense attorneys are trying to do, and maybe the prosecutors as well, see how this case goes. And if this case goes well for the prosecutors, then they'll start the proceedings with the others. If it goes well for the prosecutors, the other defendants may want to plea out because they may decide, you know what, it's not worth it. Let's take a plea deal and try to minimize our punishment here. And the minimum punishment they ought to be getting is 25, 30 years to life, somewhere in there. My hope is that they all get life without the possibility of parole, because Illinois is not going to execute anybody. Illinois is a basket case. If they're not willing to round up illegal alien criminals and acknowledge that those people are in their state wreaking havoc, I don't know what to say for the criminals who are being brought before the bar of justice. I don't have a whole lot of confidence that they're going to be dealt with the way they need to be dealt with. But at any rate, it was an experience. And interestingly too, they've had some incidents. The trial lasted, I think, about 3 or 4 weeks. So a pretty lengthy trial for criminal cases. Because I did some cases myself. I never had a trial last that long. I had a trial last for a few days. But that aside, when the case was finally called, I mean, the police presence ratcheted up significantly. 4 officers inside. I'm talking about inside the little area where the people are being kept. 4 officers outside. I guess expecting possibly that the supporters of these 2 thugs, and they are thugs, whether they're found guilty or not of this particular crime, they are thugs, that the supporters of these 2 thugs might get beside themselves and decide they don't like something that they hear, or they don't like something that happened, or that they don't like somebody in the courtroom. Because even while we were there, an argument broke out. Didn't last long, thank God. But somebody behind us was saying some very off-color things, using profanity and whatnot, and talking loud enough that everybody could hear. And somebody on the other side, this was on another case, the person was trying to hear, and the person said, "Could you please be quiet back there? The rest of us are trying to hear what's going on inside," which was very difficult to do in any event, because remember, you got this this bulletproof glass barrier between us and the proceedings going on truly inside the courtroom. And the person mumbled something under their breath, but it kind of went away after that. But I thought even in the brief time we've been here, tensions are rising, and people are willing to engage one another. So it was quite an experience. The verdict we